Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Milana Stone Art YouTube channel. As I have promised many of you before that I will provide you information on the types of products we use, sealers and paints, etc. So here I am making this video tutorial. So we make different stones. We have workshops or classes for dotting or mandala, painting classes. So to begin with, let me start off by saying that most of our stones, we actually self-mold them with a silicone mold, and I pour in cement. Nothing special, super cheap, but it comes out looking really, really good. So we got the turtles and different kinds of stones and sizes and shapes. But if you are starting off and you are not sure that you want to invest yet into any kinds of molds, and you go out looking for natural stones. So this is how we started off, by finding stones at the river. So this was one of them. But as you can see, it is extremely rigid with a whole bunch of imperfections, which is awesome for a natural stone, but it is going to be almost impossible to dot on. So two major things about creating this art form is probably the smooth surface. You must have that. Also the paint consistency. So if your stone comes out looking like this, it's going to be close to impossible. So when we started, what I did was we had joint compound, and we speckled it down and sanded it down, and it came out looking super smooth. So this is one of the tricks that you can use to start off with. So we actually did that on many rocks, but I think it's a pretty neat idea and trick. So this is the real stone versus how smooth it became. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna move to paint consistency. As I have mentioned, it's one of the most important things creating mandala artwork. So the most common ones we use would be Craft Smart and Deco Art Americana. These two brands are by far our favorite ones so far, just because they're really nice, straight out of the bottle consistency wise. So if your paint is too thick or stringy, then most likely you're going to be either very frustrated, or you're going to have to play around and use what's called a flow medium to thin out your paint if it's extremely thick. Or if your paint is too runny, there's another one just like this, but it says gel medium. Okay. Now there's another brand which is quite popular. It's the what was it? Folk art. Yeah. So that one is more on the expensive side, but it is on the thicker end. So when you do place your dots, they won't come out looking as domey. They're going to come out probably looking like a Hershey Kiss with a little bit top, you know. So if you don't like that, then I would definitely recommend using these two brands. Okay. Now, regardless of the paints that you do use, it's extremely important what you seal it with, especially if it's stones and you are planning on keeping it outdoors. So our go-to products are a spray-on varnish. This would be the clear glaze triple thick, and if you prefer a brush on, we recommend the Duraclear Deco Art, and they do come in different finishes. This one's matte. We love using gloss varnish on the stones because I think it's pretty neat when it provides that super nice shine, plus it almost brings those colors like to the surface and makes it pop more. But for a spray on, this one is definitely our go-to. If you make your art on wood, I actually like a satin finish. That way it shows a little bit of a texture. So on wood, I definitely use this one, and on our stones, we like using the glossy kind, basically. Okay, so Krylon, this one's satin finish, and this one's a clear glaze triple thick. Now, for keeping it outdoors, I would recommend definitely doing multiple layers of sealant. 2, 3, sometimes even 4. But if you do still notice a little bit, wear and tear within time, and that weather, the UV rays get to it, you simply go back, just wipe your stone and respray it, and it's good for another year, 2, or even 3. So that would be that. Now, if you make your art on pots, in this case, we had a pot on terracotta. So for this purpose, I would definitely recommend using a clay pot sealer. You would definitely need to spray this on the inside of the pot, on the outside of the pot. Let me zoom that out a little bit. Then you would base coat it, which we like using black, because you can't go wrong with a black background. All the colors you put on there will pop. So you base coat it, you make your art, you let it dry, and then again, we would seal it either with a spray on or a brush on that I've shown you before, okay? And we actually have pots that lasted us probably for 2 years now. Not a single chip, no water, moisture damaged any of the artwork that was done. So make sure you seal it nicely. Okay. Moving on to the next thing that I want to talk about is if you make your art on mugs. I mean, you should definitely see my desk right now. I have so many things here and I'm afraid that I'm going to forget something, but I hope I'll be fine. So this is one of the arts we did on a mug. Now, this is quite important. You cannot use a water-based paint on mugs or anything that you are going to be washing. So in this case, you must use a multi-surface paint. Okay, these ones are Deco Art Americana multi-surface, and this one is a Craft Smart multi-surface. So they, like Michael's, Hobby Lobby, I know they have a whole bunch of Craft Smart brand, but for the Deco Art, I haven't stumbled upon many stores that carry the Deco Art, so I ordered them on Amazon. But these are the paints that you would need to use on glass, mugs, just anything that you are going to be washing. So the instructions for this, even they say it on the back side of the bottle, is basically when you are ready to make your art on a mug, in this case, what I would do is wipe the surface down with a rubbing alcohol. That way you wipe off all the residue, like oily residue off your fingertips and all the little particles that might prevent the paint sticking to the surface as much as possible. So once that's done and you make your art, I would let it sit and cure on your safe place, in your safe place for probably between 4 to 7 days, depending on how thick your dots are. So if you overlap your dots and you have multiple layers, it probably will need a little more time to dry from within as well. So I recommend our students to let it sit and dry from 4 to 7 days. After that, you put it into the cold oven, just a regular oven, and you turn up the heat to 325 Fahrenheit, and you let it bake for 30 minutes. Once that's done, your timer goes off. You turn off the oven temperature, but you leave the mug in there and you let it cool down with the temperature of the oven. So don't take it out, just leave it there until it's fully cooled down, okay? Now, if your paint hasn't fully dried before you place it in the oven, what's gonna happen is basically your paint will sort of bubble up. It'll develop like little bubbles. This one doesn't have any, but it'll develop little bubbles. So that means that you haven't allowed your item to cure completely before baking it, okay? Do keep in mind that metallic colors, always multi-surface metallic colors, they are more on a like a stringy end. Therefore, when you make your art, just be extremely careful lifting that tool and walking the dots, especially because they can carry on and make a little bit clumsy. Okay, now another new thing that I stumbled upon recently that one of friends shared with me was that what they use is a glass medium. Since you know that there's not many color options with the multi-surface paint. By the way, you can also use a gloss enamel. That's another thing that you can use for baking your items. But this thing is pretty cool, though it is not easy to work with. But this is a glass medium. So what you do with this is you can actually use regular water-based paint, but you need to make sure that there's only 10% of the paint versus the 90% of the glass medium. So it's all in the instructions here. Basically, you would add 90% of the glass medium and only 10% of any color that you desire. You mix it well, and then it is bakeable as well. So that's kind of cool because you will have more color choices versus the multi-surface paints. But at the same time, it's a little bit frustrating to work with this just because the consistency is kind of stringy. So, but I didn't want to share that regardless. Okay. Moving on to the next thing that I wanted to share was the base coat. Our by far favorite one that we like using. It's an indoor-outdoor multi-surface folk art. Now, this is the base coat, as I like to say it, that we paint black. The reason we like this one, it has a really nice coverage. This bottle will last you a really long time, I can promise you that. But and we just get it pure black. And I do recommend a satin. Now there's a few reasons for that. Is if you plan on drawing guide marks on your item, satin is actually nice to the point where you will be able to see your chalk pencil or watercolor pencil on it. Because if you buy like a glossy base coat, the chalk pencil will not go on there. Or if you get like a flat base coat, what happens is if you make a mistake with just dotting and you tend to erase it and take it off, it'll be a little harder because it seems like the paint penetrates deeper into the base coat of the flat paint versus the satin where it's more shiny and it wipes off a little bit easier. Therefore, I recommend a satin for the base coat. With that being said, for drawing guide marks, there's the silicone one where it's more bendable. So if you get mugs that are more like chalky versus glazed, because we use those for our classes, more chalky because you can actually draw guide marks on it with your chalk pencil. So this is pretty neat because it bends and it's just so easy to use. It's like a silicone little thing. Okay, and for pencils, you must use either the charcoal, in this case, charcoal white pencil, or just any watercolor pencil. So once you draw out your guide marks, this is just a plastic one as well. I think we got it off Amazon as well. So if you draw your guide marks and you complete your art on top of your guide marks, some people ask me, well, what do I do with it once I put it in? Don't worry about it, overlap it, draw on it. And once your art is completely fully dry, you just go back with a moist Q-tip and just erase all the visible guide marks and you are good to seal, okay? So that's another, I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Next step that I wanted to cover is if you are planning on making ornaments for Christmas, because it is around the corner. So these are a hardy plastic. They're actually shatterproof, which is pretty cool. And I love that they're so lightweight because, when you put it up on a Christmas tree branch, it just doesn't weigh it down. It actually looks neat. So in this case, Michael sells, they're just simply clear see-through. In our case, we like to put glitter inside. So for that, what we use is what's called a polyacrylic crystal clear top coat. I take a syringe, I put some inside, I twirl it like this to make sure it gets a good coverage inside. And then I put it upside down because this thing is off. And I let all that remainder drip down so that it's nice and clear to the point where it's almost see-through again, okay? Now, don't be worried. I think it could take about, I want to say, between 7 and 15 minutes, again, depending on how much you poured it in there. I take a syringe, just put it in there and just make sure I do all the coverage. So once that drips down, I go back, I pour in glitter inside and just twirl it to make sure that the glitter covers everything. But another thing is, since these come off, not in this case because I glued it on, that's exactly what I recommend doing, because it has those little needles to hold this thing in place. What I do is I trim the needles because it will scratch on the inside of the ornament, and you'll be able to see the scratched up glitter on the inside. So I trim them, and then I put just a hot glue around on the inside, and I glue this in place, and that way it's not going anywhere anymore. Okay, and then you can dot, make your art, and if you want, you can seal it with, since this is like almost like a glossy thing, you can seal it with a brush on gloss sealer, in this case Duraclear gloss varnish. I've tried it and it looks amazing. In this case we don't. I just think they should be kept, in a safe place, because they're like your keepsake, I guess, in a way. So for sealing your brush on, we use a sponge brush. Just pour a little bit of your sealer varnish, brush it on. Make sure it dries completely where it's not sticky anymore to the touch. Just give it, like, I want to say 15 minutes or so. Then you can put another layer, brush it on everywhere. Make sure you brush the bottom part as well. If you're planning on keeping it outdoors, give it another dry, and however many layers you want to do, the more protected it'll be. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this answers your questions, or something that you guys can reference back and kind of, take notes on and use. Again, this is the items that we use. We really like it. We're really happy with it. We had a lot of, trial and error type of thing, but these are definitely the recommended items. If anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me. You can share the link, like, comment, subscribe, all of the above. Thank you guys. You have a good day. Bye-bye.